everyone, my name is Manami, and here's my Chapter 1 overview of the Gibbons book, Scaffolding Language and Learning. So a quick outline of this presentation. First, we'll be talking about language and context. Then we'll talk about the views of teaching and learning. And finally, we'll talk about scaffolding, what that means and what that looks like in the classroom. There is also an outline of this book towards the end of this chapter. However, I didn't include that in the video just because I wanted to talk more about the content a bit. Alright, so language and context. Language is involved in almost everything we do, and whenever we use language, there's context. There's two types of context that's talked about in this chapter. There's the context of culture, where the speakers within a culture share particular assumptions and expectations so that they're able to take for granted the ways in which things are done. And then there's the context of situation, which is the particular occasion on which the language is being used. And as children become more proficient in their language, they'll learn to use the most appropriate language to use in a particular context. So their language will become more explicit, and as they go through school and education, they'll learn academic language, so on and so forth. So language development involves a continuing process of meaning making, and learning about language is most meaningful when it occurs in the context of actual language use. And what that means for our EL students is that they'll most likely develop conversational language much more rapidly than academic language, because academic language tends to be more explicit, more abstract, and subject specific, and it becomes less personal. So views of teaching and learning. There are two traditional types of model of teaching. There's the transmissive and the progressive model, and they have their pros and cons, but they both have an individualistic notion of learning. In the book, it talks about an alternative and more influential pedagogy, which is the sociocultural theory. And the sociocultural theory sees human development as social rather than individualistic. So the roles of teacher and learner are interrelated, and both take active roles in the learning process. And so with this social view of teaching, the result of an EL student's achievement is not simply their background or their motivation, but it's also dependent on the social and linguistic framework within their learning environment. And that's the environment that we can take part in creating as teachers. And so the kind of instruction and support that the teacher provides is crucial in the educational success of our students. So finally, we'll talk about scaffolding. Scaffolding in the context of learning is the temporary assistance by which a teacher helps a learner know how to do something so that the learner will later be able to complete the task alone. And keeping this in mind, all students benefit from a high challenge, high support classroom, and this is also very true for our EL students. So rather than simplifying the task that we give our EL students, we need to instead focus on the nature of scaffolding that we are providing to the students. So what that means is we as teachers need to be able to recognize and provide unique kinds of support that is responsive to the needs of these students for learning through the medium of a new language. So that's my presentation. Thanks so much.